You're now tapped into the Instinctive Midnight Theory, where culture meets creativity beyond the algorithm. I'm your host, King Esseen, cultural creator, creative visionary. Here, we honor the past, build the future, and connect the dots in between. Let's talk legacy. Let's talk story. Let's talk truth. Welcome to the theory. It all started in the 70s, bruh. I mean, we started in the 70s, but in terms of what we do as a culture, it started in the 70s, you know?
Yeah, it did.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Instinctive Midnight Theory. King Esseen here, refreshed since 79. Today, we have the illustrious guest, Mr. Sol Messiah, producer, DJ, hip-hop fashion maven, cultural architect. And we're going to discuss a few things about the cultural and sonic blueprint that was birthed in the 70s. And when you deal with that, you're talking about funk, rhythm, resistance, the analog to digital defiant transition from soul power to hip-hop's birthright. We're going to get into all of that. The sonic codes of the 70s, funk, punk, soul, the proto-hip-hop. We're going to get into everything. But let's begin with you. Let's talk about you. What, in terms of the early years for Sol Messiah, what were you seeing, hearing, and feeling?
So, for me, it started in the 70s. And a big thing for like me and my brother and my cousins was James Brown, right? So everybody watched James Brown. A lot of people talk about Michael Jackson, but we was watching James Brown first. We watched how James would dance mainly and the music. So we would all imitate James Brown, right? And so if you could dance like James Brown, you was always centered. They'd be like, yo, let's see you do the spin, do the split. You know what I mean? That's what we did when we were kids. And so I was a dancer already. I figured out I was dancing from watching James Brown. Really. So in the 70s, my parents would have parties, and they had basement parties. So they would get me to come down and dance in the middle of the little circle. And like, you know how to dance like James Brown, get him to do it. So I would do it and do the little spins and the splits and all of that. And that got me into dancing and, and acrobatics and stuff like that. So then when I was in elementary school, I had a cat. We went to a white school, but it was like 4 black people in the whole school, 5, including my brother. It was me.
This is Decatur, Georgia?
This is in Decatur, Georgia,
okay,
right outside of Atlanta. And it was me, my brother, his brother named Anthony Khayyam, and his 2 sisters, Rashida and Shahira. They were Muslims, 3 Muslims. And Anthony came to me one day and he said, yo, we all talk about dancing. We were talking about James Brown. He was like, they got this new thing where it's like locking and popping. I was like, locking and popping. And he showed me what it was.
That was it.
I was gone. I was like, yo. So every day after school, we would practice popping and locking. So then from there, that's when it started, because early 80s, we got to see Wild Style. I remember the movie came out and we saw that. I had my dad go take me down to the Rialto, downtown Atlanta in 82, I think it was. Whenever the movie came out, 81. When did that movie come out?
That came out in 83.
83, so
but
it
was made in 82, I believe.
Yeah, it was 83. We went down there, I think, and I was a freshman. I was leaving elementary school when I was a freshman in high school. And I saw that, and it was over. That and the movie Star Wars. And then people were always migrating into Atlanta from New York. So that's how that started. That was when I saw it.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you about this. Where does Michael Jackson fit in? Because
he hit after James Brown, of course. What year did he first do when he blew after the Jacksons?
Off the Wall. I think that was 79.
Yeah. So, around 79, 80 is when Michael took over. We didn't even talk about James Brown no more. It was Michael, you know
right.
what I mean? And we was dancing like Michael. It was imitating him. And I never got the curl or nothing, but I didn't really want it because everybody had them, so I don't want a curl. And but we were after, like I said, after James Brown, it came Michael, and because Michael he didn't do the moonwalk till a little later, and that's an argument about
right.
Mr. Wiggles. We was building on that about where that came from, but it didn't come from Michael. But we imitated Michael's dancing, and that was a big part of it.
Now, the thing I wanted to bring up, because I think this is really interesting. When I talk to people in our age range, you know, who were born in the early 70s, the first thing that seemed like we were attracted to was dance, you know, when it came to the culture. You know, if you're talking about our generation's culture, you're talking about the hip hop culture, and you're talking about four facets, talking about dance, talking about MCing, you're talking about DJing, and you're talking about graffiti art, which was the context. But the first thing it seemed like we all wanted to do was dance. And is that because it was something that we didn't necessarily needed to have a technical skill for?
It was kids. You didn't need no turntables. You didn't need the, you couldn't go out at night and go do no graph because you was young, but you got your body. So that's what we were able to control. That makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I never really thought about that. It was, most people's was dance. And it's what we saw. Like I said, James Brown. We saw James Brown on TV. We saw Michael Jackson. You know what I mean?
Right.
We saw New York City Breakers on the inaugural President Reagan, Ronald Reagan.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And New York City Breakers. That was dope. So,
and that might have been, that right there might have been the best collective of dancers I'd seen, because you had Rocksteady members, you had Magnificent Force members like Wiggles, you know, our patron, and you also had Cool Keith who ended up in Ultramagnetic, who was with the Shack Crew. He was dancing for Reagan, but a lot of people don't even notice that, but people are starting to.
Yeah, and New York City Breakers was very visible. You know what I'm saying? Like we was all team Rocksteady, but New York City Breakers had a good manager. The dude Michael Holman was
very much so.
He was dope. You know what I mean? And he really got them a lot of good work.
Deep. Now we talked about Michael real fast, and we talked about Off the Wall, and that came out in 79, and this part of this series is called Fresh Since 79, because it seems like those of us who were born in the late 60s, early 70s, there was this crossroads of awareness that happened in culture around 79. You know, disco was popular, but out of disco came the hip hop. And something that I just peeped, and this was probably around that time, 77, 78, the Jackson Family had a show.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, there was a skit that I just saw, I think it was on Instagram, where the family was all dancing together. It was the Jackson 5 and the Jackson sisters. And it was the first time I remember seeing Janet. And they were doing a song called On the Wall, where it was about graffiti on the wall. So that was like a youth culture thing. And they were all doing what looked like, and I don't even know what they called this dance, but we know it as the top rock.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't go down,
they also
but they
did
were
the
all
robot
doing
too,
it.
which turned into popular rock.
See, and it's all around that time. And MC Sha Rock, interestingly enough, brought up in a conversation with Lloyd Jamar, of all people, how around 77, that's when the young B-boys and B-girls took the MCing, which had started in the very early 70s, to the next level. It was like that was the next stage. That was the next step of awareness. The B-boys who did what you described, the B-boys and B-girls who danced because the access was there to be able to dance. You could do it. You didn't need anything. Decided, okay, now I'm going to get into this next thing. And it was right around that time, late 70s, 78, 70, 77, 78, 79. Very interesting. Okay. Let's take it back just a little bit, because we're talking about the 70s. Who raised you? And we're talking about, you mentioned a little bit. Talk about your family a little bit, and talk about your crew.
Right.
Your mentors.
In 70s or early 80s? Because early 80s when the mentors.
Yeah, we can.
So, but okay, so like with me, you know, I had a cool, nice little family unit. We got up out of the hood in 73. My dad moved us out of the hood, moved us into the suburbs, and he worked at General Motors, which is, you know, that's a good job back in the day.
Great job.
You know what I'm saying? And he worked at GM, so we were able to have a house. We had bikes, we had cars, we had everything. You know, we moved to this white neighborhood in Decatur, and I remember we moved in 6 months later, the whole neighborhood was empty.
Wow.
It's all white people.
White flight.
Yeah, white flight. They jetted. You know what I'm saying? Signs were up. They was like, we out of here. They here. And they got 2 boys. You know what I mean? So, but I had my dad was really down for us. He would even get a second job and work at a toy store. He worked at Lionel Playworld. That was the name of it back then. He went and got a job over there so he could get toys. And I remember that's how we got mad joints for Christmas, because he would go and do hustles. And anyway, he always I was into music, so like marching band, playing in the bands. Well, actually, it was jazz and learning instruments at the time. Marching band didn't start to high school, and he would always, if you wanted a trumpet, you got it. Whatever it is you need, you're gonna play some instruments and you're gonna do some things. So early '80s, when I got into hip hop, you know, they looked at it kind of crazy, like, what you doing? You spinning around on your head, you drawing, because I was already an artist. He supported me doing the art. So much so that early 80s, he didn't want me to get arrested and run around the streets. So I have a basement in my mom's house. He gave me 4 walls. There was brick walls in the basement. He's like, you do it here. That way you ain't got to go to jail and not practice down there. Get my style right. And then when I went to high school, by 82, 83, I met a crew. They were all seniors, though. It was all old. I remember my mom was like, why are you hanging with all them old dudes? And they were called the United Kings. And they were graffiti artists and breakers, and they did all the facets. It was a DJ in the crew. And they were all, most of them were brothers or cousins. It was the Devo brothers. And the United Kings met me, brought me into the crew, and it was on from there, because I kind of took over on the B-boy side. I did the graffiti with them, but they did the graffiti over there, and the crew was, you know, I ran around and did the battling. In fact, a cool story, I remember 84 is this club called the Metroplex, downtown Atlanta, off Marietta Street.
Heard of it.
Soul Sonic Force had a concert down there. I'm 14. I can't go. But I figured out how to get there. So I went, I spent the night at my cousin's house. I told Mom, I'm going to spend the night at Tarico and Otis' house.
My God, yeah.
Yeah, and then we went, stayed there, and then we jetted. Went downtown into the Metroplex with the crew and met Africa Bambaataa. Now, this is the funny part. They had this Universal Zulu Nation already popping in the 80s. And we had learned about it. You hear about it from New York. And I remember, this is funny. We thought the greeting was, we thought of one word. We thought it was Pisaki.
Pisaki.
Pisaki. Pisaki.
Like Japanese sake.
Exactly. So I remember we met Bam and some of the Zulus, and they was like, Pisaki. We was like, did he just slow it down? Or did he say it wrong? Then he's like, I think we saying it wrong.
Right.
And then one of the guys, they older, they was like, Aki is brother in Arabic. I was like, oh, and that was funny. That's just a funny little anecdote. Right. I never knew. And I met Bambaataa, right? And so I had a crew. I'm short now, so imagine how short I was when I was 14. Okay. When I was 14, I had a little crew with me, and I remember him and his crew, Bam and his people was like, who's the little dude? I think we talked about this before. And he was like, yo, I met him, whatever. He was like, you in school? That's the first thing he asked. So yeah, he said, graduate, then come find us.
Wow.
And I was just like, word, which is crazy.
Because that's your real story.
It's literally happened
right
in life with you.
Crazy.
Like, it's crazy. But that was when we met Bambaataa, and it was dope. But see, the crew, though, the graffiti crew that I linked up with United Kings, they ended up meeting with Phase 2. I think they met with somebody in 83, met up with Basquiat. They met a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? They was doing things that I couldn't do because I was too young.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But they did a lot of things, and they influenced me a lot on just getting my style. You know what I'm saying? Like, they was kings of style. And they were singers in high school, so, you know, they grown.
Doesn't it feel sometimes, I mean, I guess every generation goes through this, but it feels like whenever you're at that young stage where you don't have access, you feel like you're missing everything?
Dude, I was missing all type of shit. To this day, I talk to them now. I was listening to them the other month. I was sitting talking to them, and they was like, yeah, you remember when I was like, y'all did that?
Right.
Yo. They was like, you know your mom won't let you out. You know what I mean? And I'm 54 hearing this. Like, dang. My mom won't let me out. I'm a granddad now. But
Right.
that's true though. They weren't gonna let me out. You know what I'm saying? But that's a blessing. That's the gift and the curse. You know what I'm saying?
Now, that reminded me of something I just wanted to touch on. You brought up how your father, definitely great provider, and made sure that you had everything you needed just to kind of keep you close to home. And that reminds me of LL Cool J's story. It was a similar thing. You know, he fell off of a bike, and his grandparents and his mother bought him all the stereo equipment just to keep him off that bike and see if they could keep him in the house. And the other part of, and look what that investment did. Just like you, look at this. I mean, it also reminds me what you'd said about just him, your father, working these jobs and making sure that you had what you needed and what you wanted. Culturally, that relates to, especially when you're talking about the 60s and 70s, Ohio. They say that one of the reasons why so many great bands came out of Ohio, you're talking about Slave, Zap, Ohio Players, all of these great bands, is because the parents who were moving up from the South to Ohio for these factory jobs were making this money and working extra shifts and getting their children, providing them with the things that they wanted to feed their interest, music. And once that happens, now you're creating context for culture. You're talking about Prince too. You're talking about Minneapolis. You're talking about Battle of the Bands, and every great musician will, especially from that era, we're talking about the 70s, is going to bring up how the band battles, just like the hip hop battles, sharpen their skills and heighten their awareness to change them from neophytes learning the arts and culture to becoming masters of the craft. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about just media context. We grow up with a lot of messaging, whether it be television, commercials, movies, radio. What sorts of audio and visual elements influenced you? Like, thinking on that level, like what encouraged you into the space of yourself, Messiah, the artist? What are some things that you remember growing up?
Number one, Richard Pryor.
Okay.
Very, very important. So, in the 70s, we had the blaxploitation films.
Right.
A lot of them, my parents in the beginning wouldn't let us look at. But then my dad, late 70s, early 80s, he was like, you know what, let them watch it. Dolomite and all of them, they need to know about what's going on.
The world.
And then Richard Pryor, and then a lot of he used to have like a reel to reel, like that, and he used to have all the comedy joints on tape. So, Red Fox, what's the dude name? Wild Man Steve, all of them wild comedians, and the girl who played Esther.
The Wanda Page.
Yeah. And so comedy was a big part of what helped develop me. It was rough though if you really think about what we was listening to. And then of course TV. So like I remember Bruce Lee was a big part of growing up. The Kung Fu movies, Bruce Lee going to see his joints at the theater, which was unusual to see a major motion picture at the theater. And then so it was a lot of Kung Fu, it was a lot of comedy. And then as soon as 80 hit, the 80s movies, you know what I'm saying? 80s movies was a big influence on us. You know what I'm saying? Like all of them. It's crazy because it was white culture, but we you know what I'm saying? They'd be like, California, they got the cutoff shirts and,
see, what was it
Fast
about
Time
that?
and Richmond High.
Because I think about that too. Like it was different. It was a different culture.
Yeah, it was.
Do you think that was what made us interested? Like, oh, this is something different, or?
Yeah, and then it's funny. It was totally not what. I mean, I'm not from California.
Right.
Even when you saw the movies, you only saw a couple of muscle guys in the background. You didn't see many of us in the mix. At least they didn't show us. But we were there, of course. There'll be a good conversation to build with a brother, a sister that's our age that grew up out there. But it was different for East Coast, Southern, Northern. We was like, what? They on the beach. They got their hair all flipped. They skateboarding and surfing and all this stuff and talking funny.
Right.
And so that influenced us, though, the movies. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was dope. And And so that's why even to this day, me and you both can quote these movies because it was a big thing. Rodney Dangerfield, and
Right.
Steve Martin, and it's just so many of them. You know what I'm saying? And the culture, the American culture, which is built by all of us,
Right.
was what influenced me, though, man. I thought, you would hear, if you remember early 80s movies, you would hear a lot of electro
Mm-hmm.
funk in the movies. Like they played a lot of that. You know
Yes,
what I'm
sir.
saying? And it's funny because you didn't hear disco like that in those films. You ever
Right.
notice that?
No.
They jumped straight to hip hop. It was there, but they didn't put it in the movies.
Hmm.
They jumped straight to electro. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was like, and so that's of course the early hip hop was a lot of electro funk. So
It's funny. There's a artist named Man Parrish who
Mhm.
made you're familiar, of course,
Mhm.
the DJ extraordinaire. Man Parrish. I think his whole uh, image, at least in terms of the font, his name was the reference point for Mantronics, who's a favorite of ours.
Mhm.
Just even with the three Mantronic, Man Parrish had the same thing. And I remember hearing him speak because he worked in the disco realm. He was kind of like an American Giorgio Moroder, in terms of programming disco songs and being more high tech. He called what he did hip hop. He differentiated what he was doing as hip hop and rap music as being something different. And maybe it was because around that time period, 79 to 82 or 83, disco was very much live instruments, bass, drums, this, that, and the third. And if you're rapping on top of it, that might have been seen as something different than what people like him, Bambaataa, Arthur Baker were doing, programming that had the kids dancing. Because when you think about that era, we sure we loved the rap records, but the music that we were dancing to as hip hoppers was
was beats, and it might have some singing on it.
right.
You know what I'm saying? But no rapping. That's right. It was a totally different thing. People never really think about that. How Bambaataa, I think, was the first person to add Soul Sonic Force, and them added vocals on top of it when they was rapping. But before that, Perfect Beat, Soul Sonic Force, Planet Patrol.
Right.
They didn't. What's the dude? Al Nalfish.
Al Nafish, right.
Yeah, Al Nalfish.
It's time.
You know what I'm saying? Were they out? They was out in New York
No.
or Florida?
But you know what? I can't answer that with certainty.
Miami had a lot of them producers.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So we was into that. That was a big part of all the early records I had was them dance records. You know what I'm saying? And then people started rapping. Rapping was underground then. To actually rap on records. And I remember DJing, like 83, 84, I would be DJing for people. And I'll tell you about how it even started. But we didn't have rap records. We just had breaks. You know what I'm saying? We'd play these breaks. And they would rap over it. And I remember it was dudes, man, in high school that was from New York. And they moved here. And they were the only rappers. It was New York dudes. I remember this dude from Queens, a kid named Chris. I was his DJ. He was the MC. And we ruled the talent shows because that's where the only place you saw was the talent shows.
Right.
But like going back to something you spoke about my father being supportive.
Right.
He was supportive in the graffiti. He was supportive in the breaking. And when I got into the music, I remember saying, "Dad, I want 2 turntables." He was like, 2 of them? You know how much that cost? And then I remember he said, "You work. You cutting grass. You cut grass and make money. And if you get one, I'll get the other." And I remember I got the money for my one, and he bought both of them. He just wanted to make me do it. You know what I'm saying?
He wanted to see if you had some skin in the game.
Yeah. And I had started working early at 14 at this World Congress Center downtown. So I would make a check every weekend. It would be like $60 if I was balling.
Right.
And turntables cost $65. And that's how I got a lot of my money together too, because I didn't want to cut no more grass. I wanted to work. And he bought everything. Mixer, he bought everything. I remember my mom was mad. Why you buy him all that? I'm like, he was like, let the boy do. As long as the grades, you know how they used to do. As long as the grades are straight, let the boy do what he want to do.
Right.
He happy. You know what I'm saying? And I literally stayed out of trouble. I stayed in the basement, learning to scratch, and that's when I got into it. And that was 80. I started in 83, but he got tired of me tearing his record scratching up his records. And that's by 84 I got the turntables. And
I remember him telling me that too. He said he used to try to hide his records, like, because you would find them.
Yeah, I'm finding records, but now I got all of them. But he was a trip. But he did hook that up. All praises due, because like I said, I wouldn't been able to, because I was the only kid in the neighborhood with turntables. It's crazy though, because they didn't let people come in my house. My parents didn't get that. You know, how kids come to your house, visit you, he stay outside.
DJ JC told me an interesting story. Our brother JC, we'll have to interview him, but he was talking about you in those days and how you were the connect.
Yeah, I was the only one with well, it was two of us. This dude named Booby and me. We had turntables. You mentioned this. And JC would come over. Can I come scratch? I'm like, my mom like, I'll let you come in. Can I come scratch? People don't even think about that. Can I come scratch? It's crazy because that's what he does now. You look online, online. He's a master. You know what I'm saying? But we all grew up doing that. And Booby passed away, but it's just left me, him, and X.
Oh, yeah.
Spearhead X. He was in the hood. He's still over there, too. He do his thing. He a boss. The DJ crew, the Coalition DJs. That's his company.
We'll get to X as we move forward, but he's an important part of.
He's the catalyst.
Our history, you know.
He's literally the catalyst for me doing professionally. For my professional career as a producer, he was the catalyst. He's always been one of the people who would get to it.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe this is a sort of specific question, and maybe we talked about it a little bit in terms of production influences. I think you did talk about it a little bit. Like, who's someone? Okay, well, let's talk about this. Who's someone who you looked at and you were like, "That's the guy." You know, I'm going to do me, but he is my.
The first person I even paid attention to for production would be probably Mantronics. Mantronics, I looked at him, I was like, yo, because you remember his album covers? He had the cartoon. It wasn't even graffiti. It was like
it was a drawing.
It was a drawing.
You can see what you're drawing.
Yeah, it was a drawing, and he had somebody did it, and it would be him with the hat and the gear and the chain and the drum machine, and I was like, wow, this is dope, and I wanted to do that.
Right.
And I remember I thought his music was dope. So that would be the first influence is Mantronics. Which, by the way, he got new music out, which is dope too.
Right, with Just Ice.
Yeah, with Just Ice. And I saw that and I was like, yo, that's crazy. This is, you know what I'm saying? That was early. You know what I'm saying? Because we, like I said, we listened to Bam and them, but it didn't make me want to produce until rap music. That's when I wanted to produce. I was DJing with that. When I heard rap music, I'm like, I'm going to make that. Which we didn't have equipment. What we had was turntables, tape machines. I still have my tape deck, and we had little Casio keyboards, little almost like toys, but they had a sampler. They had one that had a sampler, and this was like '85, and they had a drum machine, a Boss Dr. Rhythm drum machine, beatbox we call it back there, and those are the two things that and the equipment. That's how we made our music and our loops. They call them pause tape. Yeah, joints. And some of us technical could you know what I mean, could do it. And I was one of the kids that could do it. But
did you want to make a record?
Yeah, well in '85 I did get to make a record with some of the crew that was linked to United Kings. It was some other kids, and it was this dude named Cool Chris. He was from somewhere. I don't know, New York. It was up north though. And I got to work on, music. But back then, which people don't know, we would go to studios, and the white boys wouldn't let us touch the equipment. Black people probably can attest to this. They'd be like, tell me what you want. I'm like, Bex, I ain't letting this black kid touch my equipment. And he used to do that. I remember going to the studio, I might have been 14, 15, and the guy in the studio wouldn't let us touch it. He'd be like, tell me what you want. I was like, I have a drum machine. I can do it. He's like, nah. I was like, what do you think we're going to do? You know what I mean? If a kid is interested in the technical stuff, he's not going to break it.
Right. Jermaine Dupri had that same story.
You blocked out the chip. You blocked out
you wiped off the disc.
You know what I mean? So that was bugged out. They would do that. But
yeah,
we did get to do it in '85, '86, I think it was. We got to do a record. But I always wanted to do records. But like I said, I didn't do them until late '80s. But Yeah, man, I wanted to do that. And it was DJ. You didn't say producer. We didn't call ourselves producers. It was
Right.
crazy. It was the DJ. The DJ made the music. So, I was really into the DJing at that time, the b-boying, because I was running around battling. I kind of from my side of town and this side of town, Southwest Atlanta and Decatur. I had beat all the. Just had battles. I beat all of the contenders, all of the heads of the crews. I beat all of them. I battled everybody. I won it. So I was doing that, but I was heavy into the DJing. So there was a lot of DJs back then.
Mm-hmm.
And we had on my side of town. It was me, X, JC, this dude named Leslie, and on this side of town was Toomp, DJ Toomp.
Right.
DJ Toomp went to high school with my
That's
cousins.
Super OG.
Yep, I think he went to Thurl High School, and but he made records before all of us.
Right.
He did. He was with Shadi, and he was with Luke Skywalker. Was a label.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Big time stuff.
And he did big stuff back then. And he was young doing it, and so we kind of looked up to him. We knew him, but he was up here.
He was on another level.
Well, we made $50 for DJing. He did records and made $350.
Right.
But yeah. But I was into that, and I knew then that's what I want to do. I'm gonna do music, and I'm gonna do this b-boy shit, and I'm gonna take it to the next level. Everybody said you're not doing any of that. It's only like 3 people in the world to do that. How you gonna do that?
Right.
Since I wasn't a rapper or nothing, but that was my goal.
It's funny you brought up Toomp. Toomp was someone who, anyone who met him, I mean, now he's up here, but anyone who met him along the way knew that he was not going to quit until he was successful. I remember when you took me to his studio, which was like in an office park, and this dude is doing pull-ups. And like, yo, this ain't happening. And I was like, oh, that dude, he is not, never say die.
No, he's focusing. And then Mariah Carey. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Jeezy. You know what I mean? He's good.
Indeed. Now, being that this is a Fresh in 79 kind of 70s thing, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, as it relates to influences, the influences of fashion, attitude, and activism from the foundational time period. Like when you were growing up, what sort of things influenced your fashion sense and your and your thinking?
It's funny. So when we was in high school, elementary school, since the 70s, right? It was still bell bottoms and afros.
Mm-hmm.
Young people didn't want no big afros. We thought, it's for old people. You gotta have a small afro.
Right.
Like I call it the black man 70s fro. So it's
Right.
lower, but it had to be trimmed at all times, right? So we always rocked that. And you know who was in late 70s? That's funny. I got a school picture. I took it to school picture. Suspenders. Do you remember when Suspenders was in?
That was Mork from Mork.
Yeah. And we had colorful, the rainbow suspenders. I took a school picture
Robin
in my
Williams.
suspenders. Tight ass t-shirt on. And I was into that. I thought it was fresh. You know what I'm saying?
And it wasn't just him. There was a guy, if you were around in those times, named Leo Sayer. He had a song that they say Ray Parker actually wrote called "You Make Me Feel Like Dancing."
Mm-hmm.
And this dude, I remember performing, and he was pulling his suspenders. This is before Robin Williams and Mork.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that was the style.
Robin
at the
them
time.
probably got it from black people. I'm sure they got that from black
Connect the dots, yes.
people. Yeah. Because we rocked the low fros, the suspenders, the bell bottom jeans. It was probably a little fitted. The shorts was always too short.
Sure.
With the high tube
With
socks.
the trim, yeah.
Yeah. And then we went into the 80s. I remember going to high school. And I remember seeing, because people don't, now everything is kind of late. When you were 16, you was grown.
Yeah.
You got an apartment, you got a car, you moved out from your parents' house. It's crazy. The girls moved out at 18, the boys moved out at 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to high school and looking around, and this is what's crazy. Usually you think the little ones influence the older cats. The older cats influenced the young ones. When we went in 82, we went to high school, they were still rocking bell bottoms and afros. And we was like, yo, what are you wearing?
Mm.
We was rocking what we call prep shit. So
No
Argyle
offense.
socks, Docksiders, Sebagos, pants in the water, sweaters, vests, And we was rocking that, and we started rocking fades.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So like the fades kicked in, and we was looking at all the older cats was like 16, 17 years old, and they could say they had leather jackets, afros, and bell bottoms, and they was cool, but they was like young lame. And I remember it changed places when the new class coming in the early '80s changed everybody into this new thing, which went into hip hop gear.
Okay.
It was prep before it was hip hop gear. At least in the South, in Atlanta, it was. Well, I heard DC was the same way.
I have a quick question because your teenage years and your young years, apart from your very young years, were in Decatur.
Yeah, well, grandmother was in Southwest Atlanta.
Oh, so you were
Yeah,
both.
yeah, I was both. Every week I would go back and
Got
forth.
you.
So I got to do Thurl High, which was Toomp, Organized Noise. They all went to Thurl High School.
Right.
And they're my age. And I was in Decatur with JC, X, and a lot of dancers. Most of the dancers come from Decatur. And so I have both worlds. You know what I'm saying?
The reason why I brought this up, I wanted to ask you something. I, as someone who arrived, the first time I came to Atlanta was late '80s, and I came to school in 90, and I noticed there was a difference. When I went to Decatur, it was a little bit more hip hop in terms of, in quotes, hip hop. Sweatsuits, nice sneaks, fresh cuts. In the city of Atlanta, where I was in school, it was a little bit more stylized. You had polo was a big deal, but people were doing interesting things. Men with finger waves. A lot more flamboyance. And I just wanted to get your take on that.
Like this, they had the big crazy when they would put the colors in the hair, and we were more like, regular b-boys. They was like flamboyant, wild out. And so like this is what's interesting.
Okay.
We had been doing it at this time. It was developing actually. So like early '80s, you had the traditional hip hop. B-boy and MC, DJ, and the graffiti. B-boy was the lead for dancing is the lead for all things.
Right.
Decatur with some b-boys and some DJs. In Atlanta, they got something called Yeek Monsters.
Right.
That's like Geek Monsters, but they dance. They do a different type of dance, and they do this thing called the Yeek, and they dress like MC Hammer basically.
Right.
They look like MC Hammer.
I think he was influenced by them too.
Yeah, I'm sure because they came before him,
yeah.
And they had a specific style of dance that was nowhere else in the country, which is crazy. And but they had on these wild clothes and their hair, and they went from afro straight to fades. We had small froze and they cut it off, and then, but theirs they would take the afro and they would the S curl and that shit. You know what I'm saying? Stack it up, and it'd be like this. It'd be a wave going up, look like Kwame and them. But it was kind of wild on this side of town, man.
It was fly stuff though. It was interesting.
And they used to ride bugs. Volkswagen
and cabriolets.
Yeah, and cabriolets.
Yeah.
Like they had some style over here. I'm not gonna front, but they it's just I liked Atlanta better than I liked Decatur, and I was raised in Decatur. But I don't know. It was so much different parts of the culture going on, and it was strong. Because a lot of people be like, "Yeah, y'all in South, y'all in Atlanta, ain't nothing popping." I'm like, dog, it's been going since the '70s here. Just like everybody developed in New York. Even though people were arguing about Texas and New York somehow. Texas, because there's a lot of black folks in Texas. But it's not far-fetched to think that things might have developed at the same time in different places. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then ended up influencing because people always move around. I think that people need to understand that about culture. There's always the nature of culture itself is to absorb and intermix and mingle in order to cultivate. Hence the prefix of culture, cultivate. I mean, I just read something someone said about this is when Atlanta was trying to be like Miami, and I had to really interject and say, hey, Miami was influential in Atlanta because people were moving here, but Atlanta always had its own thing, and Atlanta is influential in Miami. It's like a reciprocity. I don't know why. I feel like because of scarcity, psychological for the most part, not so much money, because we'll get money, we'll just blow it. It's the psychological scarcity that makes us want to claim things and want credit. Hence the whole FBA argument going on now. No disrespect, because we, that's a part of one umbrella, but it just seems, trying to think of a nice word, but it doesn't make much sense to isolate yourself when you know that you've been influenced, just like you're influencing
Mm-hmm.
culturally.
Yeah, you ain't made nothing up. We ain't made nothing up. New Yorkers ain't made nothing up. It's a shared culture, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So, being that in this part of our series, Fresh Since '79, we're talking about the foundational aspects of culture and, you know, key figures and elements and influences. We wanted to talk about a few people, and I wanted to drop 4 names on you. I'm going to do it one at a time, okay, just to keep you focused. I wanted to start with Melvin Van Peebles. Tell us your thoughts and
That's
maybe
the son or the dad.
that's the father, Melvin.
Okay. It's got
Tell me your
movies.
thoughts on him. Yeah,
Didn't we meet him one time?
I met him in New York, but maybe you might have met him another
I
time.
think I ran into him. So what was his big film?
It was Sweetback, badass song.
Bad.
But remember, he did the film that we used to watch on repeat called Watermelon Man.
Okay, so that's where I guess I would start. Watermelon Man, number one. We used to, that first and foremost, people don't talk about this, man, because that Soul Man thing copied it, right?
Yes.
Soul Man, the movie copied Watermelon Man, and I mean, you got to think about it, how far ahead, and he was allowed to do it though.
Right.
The things that he was allowed to do, I still don't know how. You know what I mean? It's more I got to dig into and learn about the whole black. I don't like the word black exploitation, but that he was able to do films and do it the way he wanted to do it, and it's funny. I would say that one, Watermelon Man, probably, and it affected me late. That was crazy. That was the next level. Because when was that made, actually?
That might have been made in '69. Because Sweetback was like '71, something like that.
Sweetback was more popular, of course.
Right.
But the Watermelon Man is more, it affected me more. Because it's like, wow.
Because what was the scene we would always quote?
Oh, beautiful milk.
Where he's bathing in milk,
trying
to lighten his skin.
Yeah, trying to be white.
To me, that was so poignant because it deals with something that we even struggle with today as a community, black community. There are certain things that we do which point directly towards our psychological dysfunctions and insecurities. And as insane as they are, so many of us do these things that it becomes normalized.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when I was growing up, there was a guy, my friend Rudy used to call him Lil Richard. He was a custodian, and he had this perm, and everybody would laugh at this guy. But it occurred to me, I said, why is it that we laugh at him, but we don't chastise the women who are perming?
Mm-hmm.
But it was nothing I was going to bring up at that time. They would have chased me out of there. But it's one of those things that got me to think about how certain things that have become normalized will overlook the absurdity. But that's what the Watermelon Man film did a lot to point out, which was great, you know.
Yeah, that movie was crazy. Like, for real. I still want people, I'm glad you said it. I'm going to pull that back out. Tell them, make sure you watch it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's funny, Madlib, who's great, I think it was the album The Unseen, he was really utilizing a lot of sound bites from Melvin. And I think Melvin had to get with him on the business too.
Mm-hmm.
But for culture's sake, it was really dope how he would connect the music with the vocal sound bites and how it really gave a creative theme. Melvin was dope, man.
Yeah, Melvin was dope.
Okay, next, Grace Jones.
I got to meet her, by the way. But Grace Jones. Dope. You remember Grace, for Americans, switched the paradigm. We was like, she got the low hair, she dark skin. Is she Jamaican? Everybody was asking. You know what I mean? Right. She did all types of stuff, and she changed music. Actually, if you remember, she changed everything. And I remember years later in the '90s, I got to meet her. I was working with Dallas at DART, and every day there was somebody coming in recording because it was a major recording studio. So, but you can't just walk in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I was in-house producer. So anybody came through, I get to sit and meet with them. I mean, Michael
You used
Jackson.
to come back and talk about everybody.
I saw
Madonna.
Michael, Madonna, all types of people. And one day, I saw this pretty dark-skinned woman, older. I was like, Grace? She's like a Jamaican auntie, man. She was so cool.
Wow.
She was so beautiful, so regal, man. This is crazy. And that was dope. But yeah, her whole, and it's funny, her music, was it My Jamaican Guy?
Yeah.
That beat led for hip hop. It like changed hip hop. Like we started emulating and using her samples and emulating how they did the drums on that joint. You know what I'm saying? She was real important for just being proud and being black. She was in London. Where was she based at? Or was she here?
Yeah, she was actually here. She's from Jamaica.
Right.
She had to move to Europe, I think Paris, to get into modeling, and then she came back to New York, and she got involved with the disco scene.
Yeah, she was dope. Yeah.
But then, like you said, so progressive and working with people like Keith Haring. I saw this dope picture of her, Basquiat, Keith Haring, and Fela at a club. And Fela, you could tell he was acting up. They were vibing. But Grace ushered in a type of new wave sound and imagery. She was probably one of the first people that you saw with that flat top for black folk in pop culture.
Yeah, in pop culture, that's out front. You know what I'm saying? She took what we was doing and was like, "Nah, do this." She was dope though. She's an icon, like for real. Like you said, even the art, the way she did her art, the way she did her covers they still don't do it.
Like that video, "Slave to the Rhythm." I remember that was transformative for me.
Hip hoppers, everybody went and did it after that.
Right.
Slave.
Yeah, exactly. Check it out, cool chip. How about Nile Rodgers?
Oh man, this is one of my dad's heroes. Musician, writer, thought-provoking dude. Good Times, right?
Right.
So when I was younger, I don't know what year Good Times came out.
79.
79. There we go. And that was the first record. And I'm telling you why. That we practice DJs, we practice cutting Good Times at the break. We did it because Grandmaster Flash did it.
Right.
So he had the record. Was it Adventures of Grandmaster Flash?
On the Wheels of Steel.
Wheels of Steel. And he would do it. So we would imitate him and we would practice on that cut. That's like the most practiced cut there was for the time period was Good Times, which was Nile Rodgers. And then, as you know, it's like he popped back up, I think because of Pharrell. And Pharrell got to work with him. And the dude is just, he's like a leader. Like he changed culture. Well, he controlled it from then all the way up through. You know what I mean? From disco all the way up. Dope dude.
Very much so. I feel like he's probably the best pop producer of all time.
And he does the new stuff for the white kids. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What's the name of that group? What's their name? Sampling them, right?
Not Daft Punk.
Yeah, Daft Punk.
I feel like they underused him. Because they had a album called Random Access Memories where he played on 2 songs and they just wanted him to play because they wanted to produce it. And it's a weird thing because I went to see on my 40th birthday, I went to see Nile Rodgers and Chic at Lincoln Center. Quickstep, who was one of the first people we met down with Rocksteady and Get Original, he was promoting the show. He was the DJ and he got everybody together. Nile, I got to meet him after. I had Shell with me. I was like, I ain't going nowhere till I meet Nile. I should have brought my Diana album, for him to sign. But he, I said, I heard you're going to be working with Justice, the French group. And he looked at me and said, yeah, because they were wanting him to produce them. For some reason, it didn't happen, but he ended up working with Daft Punk. And I remember thinking, if you want to work with him, let him produce the album because Nile can't miss as a producer. But they wanted to do it themselves.
They also looked at it like his old man. Dude, you trust in that old man. You come from him. You might as well let him do half of it. You know what I'm saying? I see his name on a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff he did produce for the new cats. You just don't know. People are reading the line notes. But yeah.
Right. That's our generation reading the line notes.
They don't even have notes anymore. You can't find them.
Right.
How you gonna see it? They don't have it online. Well, they starting. It's a rule. They trying to put it into Spotify and everything, where you can go to the back and look at who produced. But you gotta go find it. And who wants to do that?
Yeah, today, we've been programmed out of it. Last name Ramel Z.
Ah, I was just talking about Ramel with Chris,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so funny because my first introduction to Ramel was as a rapper. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't even know. I was like, oh, he do art, but he did everything. He was a philosopher.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He was literally a philosopher. So I always tell people, go look at the videos and look at him online. Well, Ramel was fly because he was on Wild Style. And he had the final battle, the final scene at the amphitheater. He was rapping, and he got the song that I remember in
Me
there.
too.
You know what I mean? There was a lot of people there, but his song I remember, his style, and to this day, his record Bebop, which is a 15-minute long song. I know every word from the beginning.
I bet you do.
I can rap the whole song. You know what I'm saying? You got to play it for me to remember it, but I know that whole song.
Oh, you'll rap along.
Yeah, every word. And so, but he was, and like I said, he still ain't got his just due. It'll pop up soon. Soon it'll be how they do Basquiat and how they do Keith Haring and all of them. One day they'll get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was dope. Like, next level.
It's funny you brought up the Wild Style soundtrack. I remember my brother gave me a cassette tape with Run DMC's first album and the Wild Style soundtrack on the other. And I could talk a lot about that, but what I'll say about Ramel Z's part was at that point, his song with Shock Dell at the amphitheater you were talking about,
Yeah.
I think I felt like that was probably the best thing I had ever heard up to that point.
I
was swag. Like, this is what, because I'd heard Run DMC and I thought it was great, but I said, this is what, as if I knew, right? I said, this is what rap is supposed to sound like.
And it never did get that, though. Rap people still don't have, the closest person to me, you might not even think this. You know the closest person to me to a Ramel Z?
Tell me.
Sadat X. Think about it.
Stream of consciousness.
Yeah, stream of consciousness.
And maybe Ghostface a little bit.
And Ghostface, the way they rap, you can't. When I first heard Sadat, I didn't think he was from Derek X. He from New York? Right. Sound like a Southern dude with swag. And that's how Ramel, you know what I mean? And that's how Sadat is. And but Ramel was in his own league. And like, I'm still, if MCs want to find something dope to do, they should study that dude. You know what I'm saying?
Ramel Z, word.
That'd be crazy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Ramel was, it's amazing. And like I said, Chris got to build with him a lot. That was dope.
Yeah, he's so fortunate. Okay, there's just a few questions I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to run through them. What was the first record you remember buying?
I mean, I think I might have. See, this is the thing. My dad was a records guy.
Right.
So I would go with him to a place called Turtles Records. Mm-hmm. And he would buy the Michael Jackson. He bought all that shit. The Prince, all that shit. But then when I remember getting interested, early 80s, I think I might have bought a Johnson's Crew record.
Johnson Crew, okay.
Yeah. And remember, it was like space. And it said Johnson Crew. And I think it was Johnson Crew. For some reason that sticks in my head.
You know what's an interesting fun fact about the Johnson Crew? The Johnson Crew is made up of two brothers, one of which is Maurice Starr, who discovered New Edition and I think did some work with Planet Patrol.
Man, I had Johnson Crew. I'm going to go look up that album cover because that was dope.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be that. And then I think, what's the name of that group that did Wiki?
Nucleus.
I bought Nucleus and Johnson Crew. Those were the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, they rap, but that was the beginning of rapping over electro funk music too, though. Mm-hmm. They did that. Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because it was all called hip hop. I remember Michael Holman, who you brought up earlier, he was talking about Shannon would let the music play. Mm-hmm. He said, they have different names for it now, freestyle and all that, but we used to call it hip hop.
That's crazy. It's straight singing.
Because they were jams,
Yeah. That's crazy.
Who's a 70s icon that you would have liked or would like to collab with?
They got to still be here.
No, they can be here, or maybe they've
James Brown.
James Brown.
or his musicians, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Is that Maceo? Who is that? Is this the drummer, Maceo?
Oh, Clyde Stubblefield.
What did he say?
Clyde.
Clive. Yeah, it would be James and his crew,
Right.
or
Maceo saxophone.
or the guys, the Meters.
New
Meters,
Orleans.
Meters were our hip hop. Like
Yeah.
we got it all from them. They sound, man, or what's some other dude? The What Brothers?
The Funk Brothers, the Motown
Funk
people.
Brothers. The Funk
Wow.
Brothers. Funk Brothers. I would love to work with them. Meters, love to work with them. James's crew.
Johnson.
James.
Oh, James's crew. I'm sorry. You're a true producer. What is there any sound that you think kind of needs to be brought back or reincorporated into music today? Maybe coming from that era. Is there something missing?
Oh yeah, this is everything missing. But I would want to bring. Let me think. Well, see, yeah, I mean, I would go back to like the Meters. How hard drums. They did sound. They used sounds that people didn't normally use. A lot of live bass, and them Rhodes and them organs. Need to bring back good, hard, big sounding music because everything's thin now because there's a lot of 808 sounds and thin instrumentations and hand claps, which is cool. But every song is that. But some good, hard drums and some live bass. Like I still use live bass and instrumentation in my hip hop, but they need to bring that back and put it. I mean, even mix it up. You got these popular kids like Future and all them. Imagine if you put him with myself, Organized Noise. You know what I mean? Imagine that. And they say he come from that. He ain't did that music though.
No.
You know what I mean? Put him with Preston Crump, the bass player who still
gosh.
plays on mines. And give him some real drums. It might sound better to us. Like I don't really listen to none of what the kids listen to, but if it sounded better, I might.
It's deep because I only have 7 minutes in me for that music. You know, because it's Atlanta music. I love, feeling the energy of people around me because in the club it's lit. But after 7 minutes, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm back.
We need more. And it's interesting because I kind of compared that constant to Jamaican dance hall, even though I like that a lot. It seems like
It's the same rhythm.
right, it's easy for DJs to kind of mix because it's a similar tempo. It's hard drums and oscillating bass, but it's almost like people are looking for the least path of resistance. Let me not have to try to expand too much. Let me just use what's accessible to me. I don't have to call a bass player if I can do it right here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you understand it, but it's not as stimulating.
The thing is, 70s, we collaborated. He grew up playing bass. She plays that organ. He plays the flute. He plays the drums. And everybody had their own ideas.
Right.
And then you would have one dude who would be the producer, the director, the conductor, and he would organize y'all. But it's still your style of playing. Still your style of doing the guitar. And she sings like this. She falsetto. And those were all ideas that came together. Now, and it's the gift and the curse because I'm a producer. It's just me in my mind. But see, I sample. People be fronting. I sample. I like the way Stevie played that. I like the way the Funk Brothers did that. The music did drums like that. So I take from all of them. So I'm doing the same thing, but not just, you be like, I don't sample. I just do it myself. Dog, you don't know how to do it. I grew up in the band. I grew up in jazz band, marching band. One of my mentors, which is really important, I didn't have this early 80s, was my band director in high school, which is a man named Mr. Khan, Coln. And Mr. Khan was rough. He was mean. He was like a drill sergeant. But he was serious. You know what I'm saying? But he was man pro-black too. It was dope. So he would be like, I remember him being like, y'all niggas need to come on. If you don't help me get it together, I'm going to go. And this is in 86 or 7. He said, yeah, I'm going to go down to Soul Vegetarian. We would laugh. We thought it was a joke. I didn't know what Soul Vegetarian was. We thought he was making a joke. I said, man, why you always talking about, what is Soul Vegetarian? He's like, it's a restaurant. I said, it really is? He's like, yeah. And I remember going to college in 88 and seeing Soul Veg. I said, there it is. He was vegetarian in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Early 80s. But the point is, he kept me tight, and you had to understand and know music. And these producers today don't have musicality. They don't. That's why when you hear people singing, this is something I was gonna say. You said we'll come back. Should come back from the 70s. Singing. Singing. Don't
Right.
nobody sing. Not good. It's
Right.
like our joke is going to New York rap. You notice that nobody can sing good. We only had Mary J. Blige and Mary J. Blige. Think about that.
Right.
And that was Pooh by them. With working with her. You know what I'm saying? Puffy worked with her. But they don't ever have no singers. You ever noticed this? Sing in tune to sing good. Even Cali was messing up. Even though we had Michelle A, we had a couple other people. But like Wu-Tang, them, the stuff they did, them singers was horrible. No diss, I'm cool with some of them. But that just didn't go. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't no musicality to it. I know that's controversial. But there weren't no good singers.
Atlanta, that was almost like the style.
Yeah, and Atlanta, they had some good singers. Outkast and Organized Noise put Joy and that girl Deborah Killings and all these different
Keisha
women.
Jackson.
Man, yeah, Keisha, they was singing, man, and it sounded good. It was like, whoa, this is what it's supposed to sound like. You know what I'm saying? I think that needs to be in hip-hop. That's something I pride myself on, making sure that if you sing good. You know what I'm saying? And you an actual singer. You know what I'm saying? But I think singing, how we used to sing in the 70s, because still is no R&B made like that. I think that should come back. You know what I mean? Singers. And creating songs that don't sound like trap music, but singing on it.
See, that cooperative design that you described, she does this, he does that, I do this. That's community. And see, that culturally is what we need. We need to understand the importance and the value of each other and how much we have to gain from cooperating, working with each other, sharing. I think that eliminates the perception of scarcity that we've been programmed with. That negative seed. You know, it's all about me. I need mines, and I don't need you, and I don't want what you look like, estranging yourself from the community that you're in. We just end up as a begrudging member of the community that actually exists. We need to be intentional about being community, and that means, hey, I need your help, or let me share this with you. I got something going, you know. So, you know, when I deal with the concept of cultural alchemy, the culture is the most important thing. The connectivity is the thing that is the actual wealth. So a lot of other communities understand that. It's time for us to understand. And I don't have anything against other communities. They just need to understand that if you want to connect with us, you need to either invest or reciprocate. It can't just be us giving away.
Right.
You know? So this is the last thing I wanted to ask you. Soul Messiah, why does your legacy still matter?
Why does my legacy still matter? So I'm a father and grandfather, right? It's all girls too, by the way. Right. They don't really like what we do, but they like the culture. But it's not many of us that understand the culture, all the facets: b-boy, DJing, MC, and graffiti, fashion, health, wealth, knowledge of self. Not many. You talk to grown men now, they be like, "What you talking about? What you eat? I'm about to go get the steak." You know what I mean? Or you know, it's just wild stuff. You would be surprised that grown men and women would say to you, and you think, "Wow," but they weren't raised the way I got blessed to be raised. On the culture, I always talk about. It's really important to talk about people like I said, Richard Pryor. People think Richard Pryor is a funny guy and a nasty mouth. No, he was the most culturally relevant, political, pro-black, and he got to that because he didn't start out like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I'm saying I grew up on that, so I understand Eddie Murphy. You know what I mean? People grew up with Eddie Murphy. I understand that it's important for black people to have something of their own. That's that's a part of the legacy, to understand and be independent as much as possible. People scream this independent stuff and they'll understand it's a lot more to it. You can scream independent all day. You still need some money. So you might have to rely on systems. But as my brothers, RBG, their friends always say, pimp the system. Learning how to pimp the system. Like I tell my children now, You hate your job. I get it. You hate having to work for these people. But stay there, make your money, and set yourself up for the future to be able to go into yours. You should be doing your business and being working for them. You know what I'm saying? And I look at where I come from and what I got to experience, which allowed me to not have to work since the record store in West End. You know what I'm saying? Remember?
It's not Turtles. It's
no, I forget the name of it, but it was before we even met.
Right.
It was me and
Sauda.
Yeah, Sauda.
And eventually Rico Brooks started working.
Rico
there,
started
super
working.
manager.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like, yeah, I've been able to. I mean, it's a roller coaster. Don't get it twisted. When I say roller coaster of life, it's gonna go up, but it's gonna go down. Peppermint. But it's gonna go back up again. But you got to stay on the roller coaster. That's how I see life. And I think that understanding the culture. When I say culture, I don't mean just hip hop. Understanding the culture in America for Black people means having knowledge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You understand the devil, you understand the white man, you understand the Asian community, you understand the Mexicans, you understand everything. That's the thing about Black people in America. We get it because we deal with the devil every day. When I say the devil, that means a lot of things. But if you know when I'm talking about the devil. And we can deal with everything. We can talk to the Muslims, we can talk to the Christians, we can talk to the Hebrews with the purple and big dudes on the corner. We can talk to everybody and be able to navigate and understand how it works. And that's what I think the culture has given me. And it allows me to have a legacy as well. I'm going to make sure that I pass that knowledge on. And that's what we got to get brothers and sisters to do, pass on that information. Because, we kind of in a bad way now. The youth are bugged out. Because they ain't got nobody. They don't know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
See, and that's culture. We need community. We need culture. We need to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Not just reacting and responding. We need to know what we want on the front end and go after it and be so single-minded, like your dad. You say single-minded.
Yeah. It's like, that bad.
Right.
He'd be like, oh, no, because you just won't stop until you get there. I'm like, yeah, and I'm still trying to get there.
See, and focus is important because, there are a lot of things that can try to undermine focus, but if you're intentional about what you're focused on, you're going to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
How do they say? In no limit of time. Yeah,
because in the reality is, dude, I was just meeting you on campus.
Right.
I see it right here. And people be like, yeah, it's been a long time. No, it's right now.
Right.
And that's understanding the time. So I always say, look, we are what we say we are. They used to call it fake it till you make it. You're not faking. You that. You know what I'm saying? But you got to do it, though. You can't wait around somebody to drop it on you. You got to do it. And that's a daily operation. Game start.
Mic drop. Sol Messiah, my brother, thank you so much. This is over 30, almost 40 years of friendship, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the Instinctive Midnight Theory here. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to share it, save it, stay tuned in. We're fresh since 79. You've been fresh. Start to move like it. Peace.
Peace.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Instinctive Midnight Theory. If you heard something that moved you, share it, tag it, build with it. Culture only grows when we grow it together. Until next time, stay fresh, stay rooted, and keep your story in motion.